Welcome to the iHemp Hour. My name is Dave Crable. I'm with iHemp Michigan. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp. And we have a special guest today, Mr. Morris Beegle. But before we get to Morris, why don't we go around the horn? It's been a little while. Blaine Bechtold, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Getting back in the saddle, getting back into the world again. So, yeah, I'm excited to be back in and doing things again, Dave. Good to see Mike again too.
Good to have you back.
Yeah.
So how are things shaking in Ann Arbor? I understand the football team had a little success this year, eh?
Just a little bit. I'm surrounded in stuff. I won't pan around the room or anything, but yeah, we won the national championship. Beat those Southeast Conference teams. No good. So, but we lost, and then our coach, of course, ran off to the NFL and dragged most of his staff with him. And then we got 18 guys that got invited to the NFL Combine. So I suspect this year will be a rebuilding year for Michigan because the team has all gone in different directions, but so be it, But in terms of the cannabis world, yeah, we're doing well. We'll talk about the numbers later on. The January report's out. Of course, in 2023, we did $3.06 billion. So we're doing well.
Excellent.
And I'll be sharing some news a little later in the broadcast here about feed that has been approved for use in some animals for livestock, and we're going to talk about there's some contracts that are being offered this year for people to grow CBD. So
we're finally there. That's really
you hear about the demise, but it's still there. There's still quite a bit of interest in this.
So why don't you introduce our guest? I know Morris doesn't need an introduction for most people in the hemp world, but go for it, Blaine.
All right. Well, we are so honored to have Morris Beegle with us on the show today. Morris has been a fixture in the hemp industry for quite a while and been doing some of these national conventions and expos going on. And we really appreciate the fact that he's been taking that lead and been bringing in great speakers and great topics to talk about real soon here, April 11th through the 13th. And Estes Park, Colorado is going to be the NoCo show. This is the sixth year? 10th year. Okay, there we go. See? And I've been to a few of them, and Morris puts on a quality program there. So if you haven't had make your plans for your April vacation time, and if you want to get really informed and get the latest news on the industrial hemp world, come out and visit at Estes Park on April 11th through the 13th. So,
all right. Well, let's not steal all Morris's thunder. He can tell about it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. It's been a little while since I've been on. I think maybe I was on before the show last year.
Yeah.
I've been on your show before. And so thanks to all of you guys for what you do in promoting all things hemp and cannabis. It's certainly needed, and education is important out there. So that's what we're all here for, is to educate the public and educate the industry and get everybody hopefully moving in the same direction and whatever lane you might be in. And that's what I'm trying to do with NoCo, and all that I do is help elevate the industry, and that's all channels of it, whether that's the cannabinoid channel or the fiber channel or the grain channel or anything that has to do with the supply chain. That's what we want to do, is build an industry that's successful and impactful for the planet and for the people and for all of our little animal friends that inhabit it. So I'm excited for 10 years. It's been a hell of a ride thus far.
Hasn't it been? That's for sure.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Morris, you've done some overseas travel. I know, you talked a bit about your Thailand visits. I'm reading news that Central America is starting to supply a lot of bulk hemp to processors. What do you see on the international front for hemp? Any big surprises or disappointments? What's going on?
There's a lot of things going on. Europe in particular has been doing a lot when it comes to fiber and grain and cannabinoids. And one of the things is I've partnered with AHA, which is the European Industrial Hemp Association, and I am taking over the organization of their event starting this year, and we're going to move it to Prague in June, and that's June 5th through the 7th. And so I'm basically organizing the show. AHA will be programming the conference. This is their 21st annual show. We're going to add a smaller exhibition to it that's really a B2B exhibition of 30 to 40 tables, not like a real expo, but, a conference that you go to and you've got companies that have got tables with little pop-up banners and that sort of thing. We'll be doing that. And I went to it last year, and I was at it in 2018 before the pandemic. A great organization, a lot of very innovative companies over there, particularly on the fiber side, doing composites and building materials and so forth. So there's great stuff happening there. And when you mentioned Central America, Latin America, there are things going on over there. I did a virtual webinar thing with Colombia not long ago. I think it was in November. There's an event coming up in Peru. It was supposed to be right after NoCo, but now they moved it to October that I'm going to go speak at. Brazil's got things going on. Argentina's got things going on. Uruguay. I think Bolivia's looking at some stuff. So there's a lot of interest over there. And obviously they've been growing cannabis, and CBD has been relatively popular in a few of those places. Cocaine's popular over there too, but they export it all to the United States.
Really?
I see that as the next 2 to 3, 5 years go, that you'll see a lot more of the global industry connection going on, and you'll see folks really trying to work together and harmonize the regulatory end of it so we can export and do trade between countries and continents and so forth. So hopefully we can all get on the same page, and we can take cannabis and hemp and all of this stuff to an international level and decriminalize all of it and get people out of jail and start utilizing this plant for all the wonderful uses across the board. And if that's recreational, if that's medical, if it's industrial or nutritional, we know that this plant can provide so much for humans and the planet. And, there's a lot of work to be done, but there's people all over the world that want to do that work. So hopefully we can do it together.
Cool. So you mentioned harmonize, and we were talking just a little bit, about the markets. And I know Mike from the dark side is going to give us the cannabis numbers from Michigan, but what we're experiencing in Michigan, what you're experiencing in Colorado, is really an attack on hemp from legalized cannabis. The money is in recreational cannabis, and they don't see any benefit in allowing hemp we're not seeing good legislation being written for hemp. We're not seeing any support for putting up processing plants. How are we going to get past that? Because it all comes down to the dollars, really.
Right. Well, obviously, there's a lot of money that's been invested in the adult use side, and it's expensive to get in the licenses and the compliance. And a lot of their complaint is that now hemp is creating these competing products that are intoxicating. And most of this is really in markets that don't even compete at this point. It's really in southern markets and where this stuff is proliferating, whether that's Tennessee and Kentucky, Alabama, Florida. They've got a medical market there, but North Carolina, South Carolina, and all these markets that don't have access to cannabis. And this is where the stuff's really become popular. And because there was such an oversupply of CBD in 2019 and 2020, because the FDA, hasn't created a regulatory, program and platform for cannabinoids. The CBD market, stagnated. There's all this extra material, and it's like, hey, what can we do with this? And the lab people figure out you can take this molecule and you can convert it and make it into all these other things. And here's a new category. And based on the definition of the 2018 Farm Bill, when everything, below 0.3%, all cannabinoids, isomers, blah, 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 derivatives are legal. The language is pretty clear when you listen to folks like Bob Hoban and Rod Kite, that these derivatives are legal based on the federal definition that's in the Farm Bill. So now we've got intoxicants out there that are easier and cheaper to produce than what the adult use market is doing. And they're, unfortunately, it's too expensive to be in the adult use market. I think that they're way overregulated and it's way too costly. And that hasn't rolled out correctly in the first place. If it would have rolled out like they said it was going to in Colorado, tax and regulate marijuana like alcohol. That was the platform that got things rolling in Colorado and Washington. And then it's really not tax and regulate like alcohol. It's like tax 5 times as much and regulate 5 times as much as alcohol or tobacco or any of that stuff. So, I certainly understand the point that the adult use side is saying, and they've tried to control the cannabinoid thing. They think that they own cannabinoids and that's not industrial hemp. And what we saw initially is we saw companies like Mary's Medicinals and Wana and these bigger adult use brands jump into the CBD side of things and create their own lines of products to be in the hemp market as well as the adult use market. And now we're actually seeing a lot of these marijuana brands looking at the hemp market and say, wow, look at all these distribution points that are available in the hemp market where you got gas stations and you've got grocery stores and you've got liquor stores and, the beverages are right next to alcohol and stuff. It's like, wow, we want to participate in that. And it does open up the market and those channels are already developed and it's cheaper to get into those markets. So, a lot of the smarter cannabis companies that aren't pushing back, they're saying, hey, we want to participate in this too. And so there is opportunity there. And what we've got is we actually have federally legal cannabis and you can have intoxicating products because of the hemp side of things. So they really should be embracing this rather than pushing back and trying to do away with what we've got, because we've opened the door for legal intoxicating cannabis across the country.
Yeah.
And we're going to discuss that at NoCo. And there's an argument to be made. And Rod Kite and Bob Hoban and a lot of these folks that work on both sides are making this argument very convincingly. And we're all a part of the cannabis family, and we shouldn't be infighting. There's plenty of space for everybody to operate and pick your lane. We don't need this divisiveness. We don't need to fight over it. We have to have good policy, and we've got the FDA coming. We've got all these regulators that are going to be coming and listening. It's like, let's just work it out. We shouldn't be scared of cannabis. We shouldn't be demonizing it. We shouldn't be fighting within our own family about it.
The FDA's committed to send someone to the expo?
We're going to have an FDA fireside chat. They're sending 2 people actually, which, I got the approval of one, and I talked to the FDA today and they're like, hey, would you like 2 of us instead of 1? 2 for the price of 1? And I'm like, sure. And I gave them the promise that they would have protection and that they wouldn't get, thrown under the bus and tarred and feathered and all that type of stuff. And we don't want that. I mean, I've been pretty hard on the FDA myself about not doing what I think that they should do or should have done already. And it's really hurt our industry. But here we are, and we need to have the FDA step up and engage the industry and regulate cannabinoids, the intoxicating ones, the ones that are not intoxicating, that are really dietary supplements, food and beverage additives. These things can play in all kinds of different products, and we need to have a clear regulatory pathway for all of these. And we need to have consumer safety. When it all comes down to it, it comes down to the consumer, and the consumers want these products, but we want to make sure that they're safe products. They're manufactured correctly. They don't have a bunch of adulterants in there that can, create adverse reactions and make people sick or even kill people.
Yeah,
we want
like what was
good
happening.
actors producing good products, and we
Mhm.
want to have a legitimate industry.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a little bit of oversight, certainly on the food safety side, because
Sure.
one way or another, we're either ingesting it, flour, they're smoking it. So, we're putting it into our body, and there needs to be that a little bit of that oversight for sure.
There does. And
Make sure the
of course, there's
consumers.
a lot of people in our space. We don't need the government to blah, blah, blah. Everything should be unregulated. It's like, that's just not the reality. Everything's regulated. There's food safety protocol for everything out there. Your strawberries to your milks and your eggs, everything's got regulation around it. And this is no different. You're going to have safe products for the consumer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things I do. I help produce vegetable guys and stuff like that with their food safety stuff. And it needs to be here. It just does.
Yeah.
It just does. Yeah.
And on the other side, on the dark side of the cannabis plant, we're constantly battling the DEA, doesn't want to lose control of that, even though the Biden administration and the health folks have all said this should be descheduled. DEA is fighting a tooth and nail because what reason are we going to have the DEA if this all gets legalized? So,
well, they got fentanyl. They've got other
that's
things
true.
that are
They
way more
still have
dangerous.
alcohol they can play with. Just leave our drugs alone, right? So,
Well, that's what blew me away with the whole opioid crisis, and I
that's a whole
I
different
like
thing, yeah.
sharing this story. There's it was in with your buddy Tony. We're in a meeting, and a person from the Department of Commerce was in there, and so I threw it out, about cannabis legalization, and she's like, "Oh, well, we're not going to tackle that until we fix the opioid crisis." It's like, well, this is the tool. This is your lever. Just look at the science. Look at what's happening. So,
Yeah, they bureaucrats. Don't get me started on politicians and bureaucrats. But yeah, it's a mess. And certainly the because of the fact on the banking issues, the hemp community gets tarred with the same brush as the THC community does, and it's tricky to have a bank account, even though. Well, I love your story, Dave. When you were making those frisbees, what'd they tell you?
oh yeah, they wanted to know how much THC is in the frisbee. It's a
Like
plastic.
you're going to eat the frisbee or something, right? So yeah, it's insane. I mean, the big banks are, and of course, MasterCard and Visa would love to jump into that market, but they're not going to do it until something happens on a federal level because they're afraid of losing. And they're federally chartered banks. They're afraid they're going to lose their license, because it's still a Schedule I drug. It really makes no sense at all. So,
Well, here's the thing. We've got First Citizens Bank as our presenting sponsor, and they were our presenting sponsor last year and the presenting sponsor for Southern Hemp Expo the year before in 2022. And they have rolled out a banking program for the hemp industry and the cannabis industry now. They were at MJ Biz, at the last MJ Biz, and they're banking over 1,000 hemp and cannabis companies now, including plant touching companies. And they're going for it. They've got their compliance in line, and they're a big bank in a lot of different states. And there's some smaller banks doing it too that are more just on the hemp side. But the banking situation is way better now than it was 3 years ago.
yeah, but the problem with the banks, we have about 13 small banks in Michigan that do it.
Yeah.
But you get into huge fees. I mean, my business banking account for my media company, I hardly have any charges whatsoever. But just a basic beginning charge for a small account is $1,000 a month or more. And then once you start really moving some money through there, it gets prohibitively expensive. And they say, "Oh, well, we got all this paperwork we got to fill out for compliance." Not sure I buy that, but I mean that's what the talk is,
No, because the Federal Reserve has issued 2 letters telling banks they can bank hemp, but they still. I've seen fees as low as $250 a month, but
I
but
think
no
First
free
Citizens
toaster.
is like 150, and depending, yeah, so it can be maybe even lower. But that's, again, at least there are options out there that are opening
which
up.
we didn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I wish we could kind of get the verbiage straight, right? So that if people are talking about hemp, they think it's okay, cannabis or whatever. But if we talk about hemp, is that industrial hemp? Is it cannabis? So I'm hoping that we can get some. If we're talking about hemp, we're talking industrial hemp. If we're talking cannabis, we're talking cannabis. I think that'll help straighten that out a little bit when people talk about things. But
Yeah.
that's just kind of
So
what goes
we have
on
a
there.
question from Alice Kelsey, long time iHemp Michigan member. Hey, Alice, appreciate her. So she wants to know, are there any impending investments in decorticating processing plants? So, in Michigan, Blaine, I know you can touch on that, but what do you see, Morris, around the country? You have your eye on that? There's about 30 decorticating plants around the country.
I don't know if there's that many that are up yet. I know that there's at least a dozen that have got processing going. I did have a conversation with Panda Biotech last week, and I believe they're going to be out at NoCo, and they're building their huge facility in Texas, in Wichita Falls, which is like 6 miles from the border of Oklahoma, and it's going to be the largest facility in Northern Hemisphere or whatever. And 500,000 square feet. It's a massive decortication system. It's kind of a Frankenstein system that they've developed with several different folks over in Europe, different module things that they're doing. We're going to have a half a dozen decorticating companies at NoCo this year. So the equipment manufacturers are there. The equipment is there. It's a matter of being able to fund and finance the setup of these things, because you're going to spend roughly at least $1 million to get a good decorticator if you're going to do something that's not mobile or just a small little decorticator. And then you can spend up to 5 or 10 million depending on how you're going to build that out. And plus you got the facility and the power, and it's not an easy thing just to build out. It's pretty complicated. But I do think that you're going to see more and more of that happen. The funding and financing situation has been really challenging the last couple of years. Venture capital money has been all but non-existent. Getting money in the hemp and the cannabis THC space is really challenging right now. Markets have been just really tough, and it's not just our markets; it's other markets too. And those investors are holding on to their money for current projects that they've already invested in. But hopefully that all opens up here. Interest rates start to drop, and there's more regulatory certainty. If the Biden administration or whoever is responsible for making this a Schedule 3, if that's what the DEA recommends, and now all of a sudden cannabis is a Schedule 3, I think that's going to help certain things investment wise. But at the same time, I don't know how good that's going to be for a lot of the established markets and people that are already operating in those smaller operators. What's that going to look like with being a Schedule 3 rather than being decriminalized, which is where I think most of us would like to see it go.
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard to say. So
in Michigan, Alice, what's going on is there's been discussion about getting a processing plant going here in Michigan. We've actually been looking at some different sites to see if they're acceptable for what we need to have done. The biggest thing, of course, is the markets. If we don't have the markets for it in the end, but we know that the markets are coming on for the plastics industry, the automotive industry for one. We also know that the building industry is coming along, and these products are needed for them, right? If we're going to make hempcrete, if we're going to make hemp insulation, right, we've got to have that heard. So it's happening. Currently, we're looking at some spots. We're also looking for investors that want to get involved in it. Like Morris said, that's one of the hardest parts of this thing. But the bottom line is that like our motto with iHemp Michigan is, it's about the farmer, right? If the farmer can't make money growing this, it doesn't matter what we do. Because they're the ones that have got to grow this product so that we can make the material, so we can make the houses, so we can make the plastic. So that's where we're at with that right now. What's interesting in this year too is that there are some contracts that are going to be offered again for CBD growing. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but yeah, that's happening as well. So it's coming along. I don't think we're going to hope. It'd be nice if we could get it up and going this year, but I think we're too late to try to get it going to get contracts this year. But the bottom line is we've got to be able to make it profitable for the farmers to grow. Otherwise, it just doesn't make any sense either. So, yep.
Well, certainly the automotive industry is moving into hemp in a big way. I know Ford has been working with Lear, which is Ford is the OEM, of course. Lear is the tier one. Last year, Lear was looking for 6,000 acres of hemp because they wanted to build internal and external components. Now, I have a friend at Lear that I've already contacted to see what their situation is. I was going to tell Blaine about that once I found out. But yeah, I mean, it's the chicken and the egg situation. I'm no farmer, but after being on the show for a couple of years, I understand farmers don't grow stuff if there's not a contract at the end, because what's the point? What are you going to do? Plow it under and lose $20,000 an acre? I mean, so I understand the pain point. It's just getting the big contract in order for the farmer to have their contract seems to be the real problem right now.
Yeah, and we've all learned that lesson pretty hard. That if you don't have the contract ahead of time, right? You don't grow this like you do corn and soybeans because there's so many places to sell it. You got to have that contract ahead of time. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to do that. So that's for sure. Another good thing that's happening too is that we've seen here in Michigan is that, and you can contact Dave or I through iHemp Michigan. We have buyers that are looking for the biomass, the flour, the distillate. What's happening, maybe Morris, maybe you've seen this too or heard this, but it appears that the excess that we had is starting to get used up, and so contracts and people are looking for the product so they can make it for their buyers. So if anybody has any excess biomass that you're still sitting on out there, any distillate, isolate, or winter crude, get a hold of us, and we'll able to put people together here to sell it. Now, I'm not saying the prices are great. I don't know what the prices are they're offering, but at least it'll get something moving along. So if you've got some you're sitting on, get a hold of us, and we'll be able to put you together with them.
Most of that oversupply has been taken care of now. It's pretty much flushed through, and there definitely is demand. I mean, I get messages on the regular about, hey, do you have access to any biomass or isolate or whatever? And I know that there's a couple of farms out here that I went and visited in October that grew between 60 and 80 acres. Both of them had contracts, sold all of it. They both got contracts for this year. They're increasing their acreage. So there is, the market's looking better on the cannabinoid side and growing CBD hemp and that sort of thing. And there's a demand for that. And a lot of people got out of the market, and I understand why. It was brutal, and some farmers are like never going to touch that again. But yeah, I think a lot of that's going to come back again.
I've had this conversation with both Blaine and Dave. The state is not really doing in Michigan is not doing anything really to support the industry, and in fact, probably went the other direction. What was it, $100 license from the beginning, and now it's $1,200 or more than that? I'm not sure where that is right now, but
it's $12.50.
And then I've heard that states like Pennsylvania have invested $20 million in their hemp industry. I mean,
and New York has invested a lot.
And we're state of Michigan sitting on a $9 billion surplus right now. So I was saying to the guys, it's time to lobby the heck out of those people in Lansing to see if you can squeeze some money out of them, because the governor just proposed in her State of the State address a $60 million fund to invest in startups. Well, heck, she could invest $10 million in hemp and help the hemp industry set up Blaine's infrastructure that he needs in order to process the hemp in the state and all that. I just don't understand why the state government hasn't gotten behind that. But that's more of a Blaine and Dave question. Do you have to light a fire under these politicians, or what do you have to do?
Well, we're having some conversations with them. One of the first conversations we're having, of course, is with now that hemp seed meal is going to be available for laying hens.
Yep.
Also, we're trying to get it approved so that that it can be used in companion animals like dogs and horses and stuff. I think we're going to have a little pushback from MDARD on that. And I understand their point, but, if you and I can go to the store and we can buy hemp hearts, and I sell hemp hearts, and we can eat them ourselves, they're really, they're considered safe. There really shouldn't be a reason that we should have to restrict this for companion animals. I understand going into the commercial stuff yet, the tests need to be done on that, but, these animals aren't going into the marketplace or not being used for consumption of food or that kind of thing. So, we should be able to feed them if they want to. So we're going to work for that this year.
Yeah, this whole market, we're really just like 5 years in, so it's going to look a lot different in another 5 years and a whole lot different in another. It's just going to get bigger. So Morris, tell me about WAFPA, and you have your own ventures in the hemp side. How's that going?
Yeah, so WAFPA is We Are for Better Alternatives. That's the umbrella of all the things that I do. And that includes the event side and all the events that I've done, including NoCo and Southern Hemp Expo and Hawaii Hemp Conference and Experience Hemp, which is kind of my international platform that I'm partnering with AHA and some other folks in different parts of the world to do event stuff. And then I've got Let's Talk Hemp, which is my media platform, letstalkhemp.com. We put out original features. We curate content from around the world, put out a newsletter. Then I've got a hemp paper company, Tree Free Hemp. We do business cards, flyers, marketing collateral. And then Silver Mountain Hemp Guitars, hemp guitar bodied amplifiers, guitar cabinets, cool guitars. We utilize hemp wood from Kentucky, Greg Wilson, his materials. So yeah, I've got my hands and stuff. We've also got an apparel line with One Planet Hemp, and I've been working on a food line conceptually for 10 years, and I don't have the time and resources to do it yet, but one of these days I'll have a line of my own Morris Beegle hemp food products. Superfoods.
What about CBD? You're not doing any CBD products?
No, there's plenty of people doing that, and I'm a fan of CBD, but it's just been such a pain in the butt to get into the marketplace, and I've seen the struggles of so many others, and I've got my own struggles. It's like, why do I want to just add to that? It's like,
I hear that. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about NoCo. You've got a great line of speakers coming up, and if people haven't looked, you can go to the NoCo site. Just type in NoCo, and there's a whole host of speakers you got going on there. So I see you just added Rachel Berry. We all know Rachel from Illinois Hemp Growers Coalition. There, you got Jamie Campbell. You got Justin. Justin's going to be on there too. But so how about some of the other people, and what are they going to be touching on?
Oh, let's see. We got Patrick Atagi, obviously National Industrial Hemp Council, Joy Beckerman, Michelle Bodian from Vicente. She just took over general counsel for the Hemp Beverages Association. Frederick Cathan from Hemp Alliance of Tennessee. Hunter Buffington, Agriculture Policy Solutions. She'll be heading up a panel with ASTM folks talking about standardization. Richard Chang's going to be talking about fraud in the hemp industry and cannabis industries, which we've seen a fair amount of that over the years. Tommy Gibbons from Hempitecture just jumped in. He's going to talk about raising funds for starting an industrial hemp project. And we know Hempitecture is a success story with their insulation, and they did a We Fund, or was it a We Fund You? what's that? Whatever that one of those platforms. They
Yeah.
raised like $5 million and have got some other grants and won some other things. And, they're just doing fantastic work. Steve Groff's going to be there. He'll talk about regenerative agriculture and how we grow this crop with the least amount of impact or negative impact, and how we can grow it with a positive impact on our soil and our environment.
I see you got Cameron McIntosh coming, and they just got a $2 million contract to work with the military.
Yeah, and I got, you mentioned Rachel before, and I got to hang out with Rachel and Cameron at Rutgers University a month ago. There was a event there at the university, and they both spoke. I spoke, and both are super solid people and bring a lot to the table. Eric Herlock from Lancaster Farming, obviously he's got a great podcast and is contributing significantly to the industry and interviewing a lot of great folks. We got folks internationally coming. Rochelle Invernizzi from Italy. She's been in the fiber industry for a long time. She's also a board member from AHA. Rod Kite's going to be there, and he's going to be talking about bridging the gap between cannabis and hemp, and how hemp is really the gateway to a truly legal cannabis market, and that the cannabis side should be really embracing that instead of pushing back. Winona LeDuc, we're going to have a really large Indigenous Native American gathering this year. We've done really quite well the last few years in building up those folks joining us, and this year more so than ever, I think we're going to have well over a dozen tribes, and the tribes really have a great opportunity to finally have a seat at the table and be able to compete and contribute with everybody else. And I think when it comes to the hemp side of things and the land that they have and their real focus on food and fiber and textiles and construction and not so much on the cannabinoid side, they can really play an important part in scaling the acreage that we need for the automotive industry and the construction industry, the paper industry, the plastics industry, and where we need to scale for these industries to take a serious look at bringing in these materials as an alternative to what they might be using. So I'm excited about that. They're excited about it. And this gives us a chance to, hopefully right some of the wrongs of the past, so to speak. And, it's come time where humanity can come together, and this plant brings everybody together. So I just want to see the ability of everybody to participate together, because when we all participate together, I think that the outcome is going to be much better for humanity and the long-term solution for society.
Yeah, I see Jeff Kosher is going to be there too from Verve C. That'll be interesting, his talk.
Yeah, Jeff. And then we got Jeffrey Steiner from Oregon State University and the Global Hemp Innovation Center. They're doing great work out there in Oregon. They've got quite a bit of money that they've had access to. And so they're doing some great research, and they're really building a university coalition for sharing information. So I'm excited to hear what they have to say. And we've got a fair amount of university folks showing up, and you see more and more universities that are jumping into the research side of things. And we need that. We haven't grown this crop in 80 years until recently. And just imagine if we were researching this like corn and soy for the last 50 years or 60 years, where we'd be.
Right. Yeah, and we'll get there.
We will. We're not there now, but I think that this will be fast tracked, and 5-10 years from now, like you said, Dave, the industry is going to look completely different than it does right now, because it looks a lot different right now than it did 5 years ago.
Yeah. And for us to be able to say, and I want to get to that in a little bit here, that we can offer contracts to grow. I mean, that's been something we've been asking for. We had that. It turned out to be not true a few times. this is with a solid player, but we've had people come in and claim that they had contracts in the past, but
yeah, I think we've been able to vet out a lot of people
Yeah.
and get the bad players out of the system right now. So I mean, you still got to be careful. But
Yeah.
I see you have James Vosper from this is a new venture. He was with the Australian Hemp Association. I see Carbon Futures Australia. I'll have to touch base with James.
Right. So yeah, he started this, and James is one of the first guys that was doing this carbon credit, hemp carbon sequestration research back 15 years ago. And he published some of the very first information on it. And I think a lot of what he did has been the basis for a lot of the later research that's been done over in Europe and stuff. So I'm excited to have him join us. They reached out and said, "Hey, James would love to be here." And I'm like, "Hey, I'd love to have James join us." So,
Yeah.
The carbon markets is another thing that's going to be real interesting to see how that develops. There's certainly different opinions on carbon credits and, how the methodology is done there and what that's going to look at like 5 years from now when it's really regulated rather than a voluntary market. So I think that hemp's going to play a role in that. We know that it sequesters carbon better than most other crops if it's grown correctly. And the downstream products like hempcrete and construction materials will continue to sequester carbon. And so I think there will be opportunities for, the credits market and making money for farmers, another revenue stream. And we'll have to see how that all plays out, because there's certainly people that they think that that's all BS. A lot of that is the kind of climate change denier, right-wing Republican folks who just don't believe any of that stuff is happening, I guess, or maybe they do and they just don't care. I don't know, but I think carbon credits are going to be here to stay, and we have to figure out how to decarbonize our building sector, residential and commercial, and how do we get some of that stuff out of the atmosphere and put it back down into the soil and create living soil and start to clean that stuff up, because our soil from conventional farming is not really very good these days. And there's a lot of work that's going to need to be done. And it's nice to see companies like Walmart and Nestle that are going to be contributing to regenerative agriculture causes or initiatives and stuff. So we'll see how that all plays out over the course of the next 5 or 10 years as well, because hemp will be part of that mix without question.
Yeah.
So it all starts on Wednesday night, the 10th, really, with the networking going on about 6 o'clock or 6:30.
Yep.
So yeah. So if you're coming in, don't forget about doing that and being able to network with a lot of people there. That's always where a lot of this stuff happens, Yeah.
Well, yeah. So we're going to have 3 conferences. Just I know that you just went through that, but on Thursday the 11th, that's really policy and regulation. Friday is going to be more grain for food and feed, as well as cannabinoids. And that's going to be more product oriented. And then Saturday is going to be more fiber, industrial materials, and environment oriented. And then we've converted our education stage within the expo hall to the Innovate Earth Symposium stage. And that's going to be talking about all things, not only hemp, but it can be mushrooms and bamboo and regenerative agriculture and anything that's really there that can help for human health and planetary health, casting a bit of a wider net just beyond, not just hemp, so beyond hemp.
We have another question from Facebook about hemp batteries. Anything going on with that? There was a company, I remember running into someone at the Raleigh Expo, where they were from the Dakotas, and they were doing some type of graphene process with hemp.
Well, so there's several people that have been working on that graphene hemp battery side of things. And there is recent press, and you can Google it, Hemp Battery Factory, Wisconsin. There is a group that's setting up. There's like an old Energizer battery factory that they're converting to try to make into a hemp battery facility. That press just came out in the last couple of months, and they're trying to raise $1 billion over the course of the next 5 or 10 years, something like that. But I think the guy's name is Jeff Green. He's from Florida, and I think he was maybe involved with the Florida Industrial Hemp Council or something. I'm connected to him on LinkedIn, but I saw some press about that. Nothing's up and running. They're not in commercialization or anything.
No.
In the funding side of things at this point, but that's certainly if it can compete and perform like folks think that it can, making claims is one thing, delivering the goods is another.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully they can deliver the goods, and hopefully it's real and it's true, and it's just not a bunch of hot air that leaves egg on our face, because we don't want that to happen any more than it already has at times,
Yeah.
But I think we know that this plant can do a lot of amazing things. And, the thing that it's lacked is it's been out of the market for so long, and it's lacked the true investment. And
I think the main challenge is the 80 years of negative propaganda, that is instilled in people's brains that anything to do with the cannabis plant is bad. We have to overcome that first.
Right. Well, like I said before, it's like how much THC is in that Frisbee that you're trying to sell. Like, how much THC is in this hemp sweatshirt that I've got? Are you going to smoke your sweatshirt or that hat on your head? It's like, come on, that's
people do some pretty stupid things these days.
Right. Well, people eat Tide Pods as well and sniff glue. So
yeah, you can't fix stupid.
No.
Well, let's jump into some news. Mike, why don't you go first and tell us what's going on with the numbers with the state of Michigan.
All righty, hang on one second here. Let me pull up my story. I can tell you that the January numbers just came out, I think, last Friday, and I didn't see them until yesterday. So I went through them, and we did 242 million in January, mostly adult use. I mean, medical marijuana is down to like 3 or 4 million a month. It's way down. And so, and compared to, it's a good news, bad news thing. Compared to December, we were talking about before the show started, December we did 280 million. But that was December, the holidays, all that stuff. So I suppose in January you would expect a bit of a drop off, but still 242 is nothing to sneeze at. And so we're still on a $3 billion run rate. And as we get into the later part of the year, when the tourists start coming, when summer arrives and everybody's out frolicking, I suspect those monthly numbers will be increasing. The one interesting thing I saw in one of the stories I was looking at, since we went street legal in December of 2019 for adult use, we have generated $7.1 billion in legal sales, and medical marijuana has done 1.6. So we're looking at almost $9 billion in sales between adult legal and medicals since December of 2019. That's not bad, right? Also, I wanted to mention, I know Blaine's going to talk about the meal for the laying hens, I think, right? You're going to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing is a couple of interesting stories. C3 Industries, based here in Ann Arbor, they're a multi-state operator. Two of the founders are U of M grads, young guys. I interviewed them before. They just opened their 24th dispensary, and this one was in Jersey. So now they're in 5 states. So they're doing quite well. 24 dispensaries in 5 states. So a little, good on them. C3 Industries. And then one of the funny stories I ran into that I just had to publish was in an ancient tomb. You're gonna love this part. In an ancient tomb that from way back in the 1600s, the archaeologists pulled up a skeleton and discovered that the skeleton, when they tested it, had traces of THC in it. So for those people that say, it hasn't been around that long, well, actually, it's probably been around for thousands of years. But this shows that there was somebody in the 16th century that was enjoying a good smoke every now and then. So I thought that was kind of funny. So back to you, Blaine.
All right. Well, one of the first things we want to talk about is a little bit about, I do want to mention Ag Marvels. Dave, you got that scroll, you can put that up. So Ag Marvels is looking for growers to contract with them. They're looking for the traditional CBD plants. They're going to be making it oil. So the numbers there on the bottom there, 989-828-7403. You want to talk to Blake Klump on that. Let them know that you heard it from iHemp Michigan, so that they can keep track of where they're getting their information from and who's spreading around for them. I haven't had a chance to look at the contracts, although they just sent me one this afternoon, but they are contracts. And so there's going to be some things you've got to make sure that you do and that they do, and going to be fair for both sides. But if you're interested in growing again this year, then here's a way you can get a contract and get something locked up for sure on that. One of the things they do say is that the CBD content has to be above 5%. So that's one of the things you're going to have to make sure you're able to achieve there. And they're talking about supplying the seed, or you can do your own seed, doesn't matter. But there's a lot to that. So contact Ag Marvels if you're interested in growing for them. They are looking for somewhere in that 400 to 500 acre mark. So if you're only thinking about doing 2 or 3, that's fine. They don't care on the size of the acres. They don't care how many people they work with. They just want to help the industry and be able to provide some contracts for people, so you've got some legal basis there to work with. So USDA just published out their numbers a little bit ago for different states, how many acres were grown, different years. I have, and you can get the comparison for 21 and 22 from the NASS, the National Agricultural Statistics Service. You want to look for the National Hemp Report. This one was April of 2023, so I'm assuming another month, April, we'll have the comparison of 2022 compared to 2023. We know the numbers were way down all over the nation, not only in Michigan but everywhere. But again, now that we're seeing the supply get used up, people are going to need to start growing again so that they can fit that demand for people. So I think you'll see contracts. Also, if you have any excess biomass you've had around, or distillate, isolate, that there are buyers that are looking for that. If you want to contact us through iHemp, we'll pass that information on and we'll get you in contact with them. So if you have some that's been around now, I don't know the prices right now. I'm sure, again, they're not going to be as good as they were back in 18, 19 kind of thing. But if you have it around and you want to get it moved, there's markets for it. So it's starting to free up again. So just let us know and we'll help where we can. That's what we've always tried to do through iHemp. So let's talk a little bit about the big news that came out just recently was the seed meal to be able to use in laying hens. Now, each animal, it's going to have its own testing done. So this isn't approved for broiler hens, right, or for turkeys or that kind of stuff. It's really right now just for the laying hens. But the Hemp Feed Coalition has been working on this for a number of years, and they're a 501c3 dedicated to obtaining federal approval for hemp grain products and animal feed. It is pleased to announce a landmark achievement with the tentative approval of hemp seed meal for laying hens at the recent Association of America Feed Control Officials mid-year meeting. Tuesday, January 23rd, with no this is when that happened. With no opposition, this will go before the AAFCO board and members for final approval, and then be adopted in an official publication later this year. This historic milestone has been more than 3 years in the making and will allow processors to formulate with hemp seed meal in the diets of laying hens and sources of protein and fat, and inclusion of no more than 20%. If you want to find more information out and the details on it, if you go to the Hemp Feed Coalition website, they have all the information there. Plus, if you contact us, we have information on the actual tests that were done, and we've been given permission to send that information out, so we can give you all the details of how they made that all, what they fed and the results of that. Bottom line is these the laying hens that were fed the hemp seed meal did very, very well. There's also one company in Pennsylvania right now that has the authority to sell the hemp seed eggs, but now, of course, everybody will be able to. So just another small step, and that's going to be there. And then there's all kinds of tests going on. And if anybody's interested in helping the Hemp Feed Coalition with doing some tests on their animals, they're certainly welcome for that. But we've got to make sure that we do the test correctly so that when the information is submitted to USDA, they'll accept it as far as being part of, have the right results so that USDA will accept them as it goes forward. So,
cool.
And that's kind of the news I got right now, Dave. So,
all right. Well, should we wrap up, or do we want to hit the recipe real quick?
If you want to do the recipe, Dave, on your peanut butter balls, I think that's a great thing.
Well, we have. I should have grabbed. I have some packaging that I've done for this, but these are Hempy award-winning chocolate nutty CBD protein balls. It's Kiona. How do you pronounce this, guys? Quinoa. That's
Quinoa.
Quinoa. Thank you. I knew I was doing it.
Quinoa, yeah.
Quinoa.
Read it there, you know.
Okay.
You can read it, but you can't say it.
Yeah, that too.
I see almonds are missing from there. So it's quinoa, almonds, chocolate, dates. The dates kind of hold it all together. This is what they look like if you roll them in the hemp seed. It gives them a little extra nutty flavor. But it's basically a third cup quinoa. You cook that up. 16 whole dates. You have to, first I start with the almonds. You have to, in the food processor, pulverize the almonds to little pieces. Then you throw in the dates, get all that mixed up. And while I'm doing that, I'm heating up some peanut butter with my CBD distillate mixed in. And then you throw your quinoa in, easy for me to say, and your peanut butter, and then your chocolate chips. And you get this, in the processor, it becomes like one big mass. And then what I do is I portion it off with a cookie, a little cookie scoop, like a little ice cream scoop, but for like little cookie balls, and make individual servings. So it works out. When I do, I've been doing 1.7 grams of my CBD distillate and mixing it in with the peanut butter. And then that works out to about 40 milligrams of CBD per CBD ball. And mostly it's for my hockey buddies and helps us with our old age, with their inflammation. So we love it.
Nice.
So you can find that on ihempmichigan.com. Also on iHemp Michigan, we have a lot of content available, to consume. If you're wanting to learn anything about the industry, go there. There's a lot of information.
And a ton of recipes.
And a ton of recipes.
A ton of recipes.
But to really learn a lot, you need to go in April to Estes Park, Colorado, visit Morris at NoCo Hemp Expo.
April 11th through the 13th is when the expo is going to be there. And you can stop in and say hi to Morris and say, hey, we saw you on the iHemp Hour. And right now, Becky and I are planning on going. That's going to be our little breakaway from all the stuff that I've been going through. So I will make a little plug here like Dave did when he was going through his little cancer stuff. If you think you got something going on, make sure you get in talk to your doctor. I got in early on mine. Luckily, mine was just a stage 2. And I think we've got it all treated. I had my test done last week, and I'm waiting for the results from that. But early detection, folks. early detection saves a lot. That's for sure. So don't put it off. If you think you got something strange going on in the body, make sure you get in and talk to your doctor and make sure you follow through. It took a number of tests before we finally figured out what was going on with me. So, yep.
All
I'm
right.
still here to talk about it.
All
Excellent.
right.
Well, thanks, Morris. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Morris.
Thank you, guys. Keep up the great work. Appreciate all that you're doing, and hopefully at some point we'll get to the promised land all together.
It'll all be worthwhile. There we go.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks for joining, everybody.
All
See you
All right.
next
Thanks,
year.
everybody. Have a good
Peace
one.
and love.